Do we have anyone in class? Actually, it's off. It's good. It's not my election rally otherwise. Okay. So yeah, it's on. Okay. So we're gonna see refactoring existing code, uh, and we can refactor the code by finding the bad smells in the code and refactoring it. So what is refactoring? Basically, it is improving the design of the code, and we can a real life example would be to renovate your house. So the structure of the house remains the same, but we renovate it, and we have the things at right place now. It's cleaner, and the life of the house also increases by renovating it. So basically, refactoring is renovating renovating the code. Now the question is, why do we want to do refactoring? First and the most important thing is keeping the engineering alive, because you start with the project, it goes on very well, and after a year or after a few months, when a new feature comes in, we end up putting in hacks and patches to solve it, but the project is no more scalable. Okay, to keep the engineering alive, we need to do refactoring so that even after 1 year, the code is good enough to accept new features and new code or new modules. The second is increasing the life. So obviously, if we have code engineering alive even after certain amount of time, the life of the project increases and also the code. The third thing is also important. It's with respect to the developer. So we learn to write clean code. So when someone starts refactoring, it takes a lot of time to refactor the code actually. And as we are into refactoring, after a few months or after a few days, we'll learn to refactor and we'll end up writing cleaner code in the first hand itself. So the time spent on refactoring will be lessened after every phase of refactoring we do. So as we learn refactoring, in the first hand itself, we'll be writing cleaner code. So it is good for the developer also. And if the code is clean, obviously it's easier to understand. The fifth is the second most important thing. Uh, So if we have the refactoring in a phase like this, that we write the code, then we write the test codes, then we refactor it, and then we create the pull request. So in that case, once someone will be reviewing our code, he won't have to spend so much time actually reviewing it, because we have already done refactoring and the code is already in a very good situation. So the time spent on code review will be really less in this terms, and it helps to code faster for sure. The seventh is like a situation that happens to a lot of us, that we want the code to behave the same way on Monday as we left it on Friday. That is related to the engineering. Now we know why do we need to do refactoring and what it is, but another point is like when we need to do it, or when we should do it, or we should do it at all or not. For this, a few things that play the role are, first of all, the deadline of the project. If the deadline is really close, we don't have a lot of time to refactor the code, so we just don't do it. It depends on the cost and your project manager also, as how much emphasis does he or she puts on you refactoring the code. But there are basically four times when we actually do the refactoring. We can choose any one of these. The first is when a version is completed. So when we have a major or minor version of the project to be released, we have the code done, we have the test codes written, everything, then we can start refactoring. So that takes a lot of time because it's a whole version to be refactored. The second is when most of the people actually do it, and that is when we have to hand over the project, or the project is in a situation that is no more scalable. We are doing something, putting something at one place, and four other things are popping out wrong in a totally other way. So that is the situation when people are like, okay, now we need to refactor the code to keep it alive. The third is before every commit. So as I've explained earlier, that we can code, write the test, refactor it, then push it. So after every commit we can do it. The fourth one is after writing each method. So this is extensive refactoring, which actually requires a lot of time. So after a few lines of the code, or you have written a method, you can refactor it and then proceed. This is actually time consuming. What I usually do is the third one, that is adding the refactoring phase in the development cycle, as we code, write test codes, and we refactor, and we push the code, and then the review of the code is done. So let's take an example, and with an example we can see a few steps as how we can refactor the code. So the example is that you go to a store to rent a movie. Now here are three components. The first is you, which is a customer. The second is rent, which is the sort of process that you will be doing, and the third one is movie, which the thing that you are actually renting. So here we have three classes: customer, the rental, and the movie. And let's see how they look. The left side is very easy to understand. We have a title to the movie, and we have a price code. Price code is basically three kinds of movie. Children has different price, regular has different price, and new release has different. This is like the category of the movie. And at the right side we have a normal Java code, a data class where we have the getters and setters. The next is rental. So rental has a movie and days rented. So the movie and how many days it is rented. So this is the rental class, and the final class is customer, where we have the name of the customer, which is the how we uniquely identify a customer, and then we have a list of rentals of that customer. Now what we want to do with this three classes is we want to generate a statement as the total cost uh, for a rental. So for this, what we'll be doing is we'll be adding a normal method in our customer class, which is called statement, and we can call like customer object dot statement to get the statement, and we just print it. So this is the on the right side. I hope it is visible. On the right side, we have the code which we usually do when we are asked to like write the whole statement code in one method and done. This will just do the work. We just wrote some test codes and it's working fine. But the thing is, can we refactor this code? Well, we can refactor this code. That's why I'm giving the exact example. So what do we do next? Oops. Yeah. So what's wrong in the code? We need to see the code. Okay. Okay. So the output of this code is something like this. We have a rental record for the name of the person. Then we have two movies which were rented, and the prices and the total amount. And we have a frequent renter point, like frequent flyer points, the person who rents a lot. So we get those points. So this is how the output is. It's a normal text output. So we see what's wrong in the code. First of all, the method is really, really long. This is the first way we identify bad smells in code. If the method is really long, it is not good. And the second thing is there is too much burden on the customer class. So we just have a statement method in the customer class, and that is doing everything. The other two classes, the movie and the render class, is basically doing nothing other than just holding the values. So, and the third one is if the next day the client comes in and says that I want the output in HTML format and not just in the text format. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to copy this method completely into a new method, like HTML statement, and then we'll have to change it. So the output is totally dependent in this method. So we'll have to like copy a new method, which is not good. And the bad part of it is, first of all, there's duplicacy, and the second reason, if we need to change the business logic, say the logic of finding the total cost, we'll have to do all those correction in both those methods every time. And if there is a third way, like other than text HTML, there's a third way, we just keep on copying it, which is not good. So we'll start refactoring the code. So first, before refactoring, it's good that we write the test, so that after each phase of refactoring, we just run the test and we see that we are on the right page, because we don't want to change the output, we just want to improve the code. So the first thing that we can look into is, in the long method, if there are parts of the method that we can actually take out and put into a different method, so that we don't have a lot of we don't have a long method. This is how it looks here. We can see that we have a while loop. So we are looping each rental, because the customer can have a list of rentals. So we are looping each rental, and we are finding the cost for each movie, and then we are just printing it. That's all which is done in this method. So what we can do is this part where we are identifying the movie type and then we are calculating the cost. We can just take it out and put it into a different method. On the right side, you can see that we have taken this part out. We have put it into a new method called amount for. We're just passing the rental object in that, and then we are calculating the cost. So now instead of one long method, we have two methods. Yeah, and then we can just call this amount is equal to amount for, and then pass the rental. I hope this is clear. Okay. So the next thing that we can do is rename the variables. So after okay, so after every time we have created a new method, what we need to see is if the variables are named good enough. Because right now it says like the method name is amount for, and the variable is this amount, which doesn't generalize this method. As we want to make it more of a general method, we need to rename it according to this method instead of what we named it here. So I just renamed two things. I renamed each to a rental and this amount to result. So this is the renaming that we must do every time we pull out some code and put it into a new method. Now, here's the second thing that we need to see, that the method that we have recently created, does it really belong to that same class where it is right now? Or does it belong to some different class? How we can do it is by seeing the parameters in the method. So we see that amount for actually has rental as the parameter. So we can say that this belongs to the rental class instead of the customer class. So what we can do is we can just move it into the rental class, and now instead of calling it this way, we call it the rental dot get charge, or get whatever the method is, get the price. Now we did this for calculating the price. We also have a logic to actually calculate the frequent renter points. We can use the same procedure, take out the frequent renter points, create a new method, and push it into the rental class. So that's what we did. Now the rental class looks a bit different. It has two methods, get charge and get frequent renter points. This is how we did it. Just took out the code. Now the third thing is taking out the temporary variables. We can see here that we have total amount, then we have frequent renter points, then we have this amount. These three are temporary variables that doesn't have any scope out of this method. So we must try to get rid of these, and we can do it by this way. So here the frequent renter points is actually incremented after each loop, and also the total amount is incremented by adding this amount. So what we can do is we can take these two parts of the code out of the method that way, and we have a get total charge, get total frequent renter points, and we are using the same while loop that we have in the main method. So we are looping it, and then we are getting the value. Now if you see, the statement method has all the code out of it, the business logic is out of it. What it is doing is just printing the text, and everything else is out in different methods. Now the thing is, as we have created new methods, we need to again see if the method belongs to this class. So we have get total charge and get total frequent render points. Now we see, does it belong to the customer class? Again, we can see that by seeing looking at the parameters of the method. As it doesn't have any parameters, we can say that this belongs to the same class. So these two methods, new methods, needs to stay in the customer class, because the main method is really dependent on these two. Now, so we do this in a loop, like finding some code, putting into different methods, seeing if that method belongs to the class, moving that method to different classes, and then it looks something like this. So previously we had these three classes, and we had just the statement method which calculated everything. Now we are transformed it into different. We have in the movie class, we move the get charge method. So each movie's charge will be calculated by that method. Then we have rental. In rental we have the get charge method, which ultimately will be calling like movie.getCharge, so as to calculate the total charge. And then we have statement. In the customer class we have the statement, we have the HTML statement, we have the get total charge and get total frequent render points. So this is how we did it, the refactoring. Now we did the refactoring by actually identifying what's wrong in the code. So we identified that the code is long, that all the code is like all the code is in the customer class. It needs to move out to different classes. So what are the different smells that we can identify? Now this not only helps in refactoring the code, but it also helps in reviewing the code. So if I'm reviewing the codes and I keep in mind a few points, I can always identify if the code is good or not. There are more than 20 or 30 points, but these are the 10 most important points which I think uh, by which we can identify the bad smells in code. The first one is duplicated code. As we discussed, if we want to have the HTML statement also, we'll have to totally copy the method two times. That will make the code duplicated. So if there is duplicated code, that is the first thing that we can identify. Okay, the code is not right here. The second thing is long method. As we have already seen, the statement method was really long and everything was done inside that. So whenever there is long method, we can say that there are batsmen in the code and this code needs to be refactored. The same goes with with large class. If one class is doing a lot of things, we can actually divide it into different subclasses, or use inheritance, or move it to like different classes at all to keep the classes short. Fourth point is long parameters in a method. So there are sometimes methods in which we have like 10 or 20 parameters. So those are really long. Whenever we see something like that, that means the code is not right. In that case, what we can do is we can see how we can identify the same type of parameters and maybe try to create a new class in which those methods will reside, and then pass the object of that class. So that will be one object, and that will take in like 4 or 5 parameters inside it. So we should always try to do that instead of passing 20 parameters. We have a few other things like lazy class, where we have sorry yeah we have where we have methods which are not actually being used in that class itself. So maybe we should try that the methods in those class maybe can be moved into different classes where it is used more, rather than having that in the class. The eighth point is data class, which is really important. So what we saw from the previous example was movie and rental. Both these classes just had some variables which it was holding, and it was not doing anything other than just holding that variable. Those are like the data class or model classes. What we should do is we should keep the class respective methods in the class itself. So what we did was we moved a few methods from the customer class to the rental class and the movie class, so that so the closely related methods must reside in the same data class, and they have more responsibility actually to do, rather than just holding a few variable. Now the ninth point says, when we have one class and we see that it is accessing a lot of other classes and it is doing nothing but it's just accessing other methods. In that case, what we must think is of uh, how much is it accessing other methods, and maybe the current method which is accessing different classes can be moved into that class so that it doesn't have to communicate through the class, but it stays inside there and it can communicate within. The 10th point is comments. So comments are not bad, but somehow comment says that the variable names and the method names are not self-explanatory, and thus they cannot explain what they are doing. What we must do is we must avoid the comments so that the name of the variable and the methods can explain for themselves as what they are for. So yeah, that's it. Any questions? Well, refactoring is, I think it's an art. Like writing code is an art. So you learn it. As more of refactoring you do, you actually end up writing cleaner code in the first instance itself, and then you decrease the time of refactoring. So the more you practice on refactoring, the lesser time you will spend on refactoring actually. So what I usually personally do in my free time is I take some really old project, even the project of Eclipse era, and then transform it into Android Studio and then start refactoring it. So that's how you actually learn to refactor the code, and then you can avoid long time. As for refactoring, initially, if the developers doesn't know a lot about refactoring, it might even take maybe 50% of the time that you actually spent on that specific part of the project. It will take 50% of the time to refactor it. But the more you do refactoring, you learn it, and you'll save a lot of time. And also, you are saving the time of code reviewing in that. And in the long term, the return of investment is really good. So I suggest everyone to add refactoring as a phase in development cycle. That's it. Okay. Well, that's how we usually start. The people who doesn't know a lot of clean coding, they actually start by writing just one method. So if I say that you need to generate a statement for the customer, what you will do is we'll just start with the method statement and you write all the code in that method. Refactoring actually tells you as how you should divide it into different methods and different classes and end up having a cleaner code than what you have. That's that's actually what is explained over here. So there are different level of developers. Some people start from the first phase where they write big codes. Some people start from a different phase. Very few write the code which is totally clean. So you can pick it up from any phase explained over here, and then you can move it to the end phase. Yeah, I guess that'll be it. Thank you.